right, folks, welcome back into another Mancast. It's Mancast 22. Torture Man crew coming back at you for another one. Let's get on it. So today we are talking about some important information about science. We're getting into it in the nitty gritty. You know why? Because science makes my heart swell the same way the COVID vaccine does. We also have other reasons to be skeptical. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ed. What say you, brother?
Well, that is the thing we're going to discuss. Skepticism in all manner of science and life and government in particular in our country. And the fact that skepticism has become rare and most people are extraordinarily compliant. And the people who used to have any power and the power that they held at all have just literally stopped asking questions, period. And probably most notably our media, which has been failing us for a good 40 years now, maybe longer, and really don't care to know the truth. They toe the line for the government no matter what. There is no skepticism at the level where we can get any real answers. And people have become more and more compliant because nobody's asking the hard questions. Now, we can have a podcast and we can talk about whatever we want, be skeptical as we feel like. But unless we're a reporter in a room talking to the people that can actually give answers or catch them in lies, then it doesn't matter. And since all the press show up in front of government asking the questions that are put on a little piece of paper for them to ask, there is no skeptic. So we need to get back to that. And then we have a little thing that we'd like to play here by Carl Sagan, who can explain this in probably a quicker fashion than we can. And we can pick up the conversation after that.
There's two kinds of dangers. One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson lay great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
Who knew Sagan knew about Thomas Jefferson? I mean, I knew he was a brilliant physicist. I knew he was like Mr. Science, but who knew he was like steeped in the beginnings of our nation and how important it was to one of the most fundamental founders of the entire thing, the entire nation, Thomas Jefferson, how important it was for you to be skeptical, to be a scientific minded person, and to be someone who's constantly steeping yourself in the research. Even though you don't have to be a quote unquote scientist, everyone, voters, all voters should be researching for themselves, right?
Yo, first off,
there was a time during COVID we were told not to research.
Well, okay. So first off, with Carl Sagan, the man's a genius, right? Yeah. So, I mean, his brain's so large that while his life mission was science, I am sure he was brilliant on a lot of subjects. And that doesn't surprise me because he's just so brilliant. I mean, I'm a historian for football and MMA, so I can do two things at one time. So, but it is interesting, right? That he brings up what the founding fathers and what their goals were was to make sure that the people kept the power. The reason to give the people the power was so that they can never lose it. I find it interesting, however, because of our lack of skepticism, that we've literally handed it back over again and said, hey, we just want to be sheep now, and we don't want to actually have to think for ourselves. We don't want to question anybody. We just want to be told what to do. And then we get fun things like COVID, where everybody just rolls over and plays dead and should be ashamed of themselves. He also said that part of the fundamental reason to be skeptical is because you should be concerned for your own human frailty. You should be interested to know what anybody is saying to you and how it affects you personally. And if you're not willing to defend yourself, then shut up and get out of the way for the people who are. That's all I got to say. Anybody who does not want to step up to the plate and ask hard questions, could you please step aside, stop voting, stop being involved in something you don't understand, and let the rest of us do the job. And we'd be living in a much better society from the position that I'm seeing it from.
Fantastic points, brother. So yeah, at the same time, you got to be critical across the board. Just like you said, we should have been more, well, not you and I, but people should have been more critical about the narrative that was fed to us during COVID. But let's fast forward to now. Let's talk about today. Climate. Climate is the scariest thing we're going to talk about right now. That's what they want to use that as a catalyst to force all kinds of shit on us, from, ESG scores to lockdowns in the future to curtailing, even having farms, even having literal standing cattle. They want to just grow all your meat in a lab. Otherwise you eat the bugs. So,
right. They're okay with us actually eating bugs.
Right. So with all that in mind, you have to be skeptical. If you're not being skeptical, if you're just taking it at face value, you are part of the problem. Sorry. And I'm going to start. I have no choice but to start telling you about this. I'm trying to. I'm trying to gently tell some people I care about it. I have a friend who's I won't name his name, but he's a liberal, and you can tell the more you get into the nitty gritty of these subjects, he's very cursory. Like, he just gets whatever he gets from his liberal narrative stations, and that's it. But the good news is he admits it. He's like, well, I haven't really looked into it, but this is what I think, And so, like, when I brought up the Hunter Biden laptop, he's like, well, wasn't
Can I
that...
stop you for 1 second real quick?
Sure.
Okay. I haven't really looked into it, but this is what I think. Strikes me as an odd thing to say. Because if you haven't looked into it, you can't possibly have a fucking thought on it to begin with.
Well, no, he starts by saying, well, no, it's this, right? And then you go, no, actually, it's this. And he goes, okay, well, I admit I haven't actually dug into it. So that's fair. But I get you. So anyway, please dig into it, people. Fuck. But anyways, have some skeptical. Skepticism. Today's word is skepticism. Anyway, so yeah, I'm like, so the Hunter Biden laptop is a real thing. And he goes, well, wasn't that tampered with by the Russians? And I'm like, man, that's so 2019 of you. I'm like, bro, no, it's been proven now by all of the agencies. And then I pulled up the article, and I just kind of read it to him. And he kind of all right, whatever. We kind of changed the subject. He was getting uncomfortable. I was getting worked up. And what I was noticing about myself is that when I try to explain all this kind of stuff to people who are liberal, and when I mean liberal, I just mean they're just middle of the road Democrats. They have a cursory view of politics. They're not steeped in it. They have very little understanding of it all. Honestly, it's very small amount of understanding, but they get what they get. And so they're like, well, I'm going to comport to that. My parents were Democrats or whatever, so I'm going to comport to that. So when you start to bombard them with information, like once I start to like really get on a roll, I'll start throwing shit down, and I could just see like his head spin around, and then everything I say, I might as well be like wearing a KKK hood and a tinfoil hat and a Fox News like logo on my chest. Like I'm every I'm saying so much ridiculous shit in his mind that I'm everything I'm the antithesis of what he wants to be, because he's not privy to this information. And I would have to stop everything I'm doing and walk him through it all chapter and verse, because he has no like foreknowledge about it. There's no, if I tell you, hey man, there's a new development in the Hunter Biden story, I don't have to catch you up on the fucking thousands of points about
Right.
it.
And all the proof we've already seen. But I brought this up before.
Yeah.
I call it the Tarzan effect. What you're talking about with people's political takes sometimes. To me, the Tarzan effect is when Tarzan is a child and the chimpanzees raise him, right?
Mm-hmm.
His whole life. He's now a full grown man. He's probably stronger and faster than most men because he's raised by chimpanzees, but he doesn't know that he's not a chimpanzee. He knows he's not exactly like them, but he still thinks he's a chimpanzee, right? Because he has no other basis to question anything that's going on around him. Right. So when people get locked in to politics because their dad was a Democrat, their grandfather was a Democrat, and those sorts of things, Republican, it doesn't matter. I was raised in this cult, so I believe these cult things. That's what the Tarzan effect is. You believe what you believe because you have no other basis of information to believe otherwise. And that's why our podcast is here, people, to help you with that.
That's right. We can do it. Just listen up. Also engage, comment. If you're watching this right now, hit us up. We want engagement. If you disagree with what we're saying, ask to come on. We will bring you on.
Absolutely.
We will have and honestly, we will actually tone down our rhetoric just to be a cordial gentleman, because that's who we are. We get fired up with each other because we're not combative. We're here. Ed and I we're rhyming. We're having a good time. We're agreeing. We're spitting. If you're going to come on and you want to chat with us and you have a different point of view, trust me, we're going to be a lot less combative, a lot less aggressive with you, because we literally want to hear what you have to say. We're here. This is catharsis for Ed and I. We're not going to do that if you're a differing guest on with us. We're not going to sit here and just like try to berate you. I'm not going to play got you or anything like that. Let's have an honest discussion, because that's what it's all about.
I'm dealing with technical difficulties.
Apparently. I saw your nipples like for a minute.
I am trying to deal with it right now.
Fair enough. So okay,
I fixed it.
Ta-da.
So skepticism is good because you're asking difficult questions, and I think people need to be skeptical. Generally speaking, I don't think most people want to get that far into it. It's not part of their everyday life, and as much as we make it part of what we do. But then the only thing that I would say to those people is, shut the fuck up. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't. If I walk into a room accidentally and it is filled with heart surgeons, I'm not going to talk about heart surgery with them because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Let me stop you there, because you're right. And I know this about you, but here's another point. You're not going to go into a room of heart surgeons, hear them speak over your head, say a bunch of really crazy shit about how the arteries work and then put you in a dizzy and you're like, whoa, I didn't really understand that, but I did hear this one really cool fucking clip. are you then going to go out on the internet and go, hey, by the way, I know a shit ton about hearts, and here's this one little snippet? No.
I'm a heart expert now because I stayed at a Holiday Inn.
I overheard some people talking about heart surgery, and I didn't actually really catch much of it, but I did hear one little juicy snippet.
But now I'm an expert because I heard stuff.
So I'm going to present myself that way. Yeah.
That's not skepticism. That's being an idiot.
You're just a scam artist.
So we even get past. So we don't even have in our own media now skeptics that are willing to just call bullshit when it's obvious. So last week, I'm sure everybody knows, the planet reached its hottest level ever. We're all going to boil to death, right? We're all dead. It's over. They're talking about it on the Senate floor. I'm
going to so edit in so many flames right now.
So screaming
at
and
1550. Yeah.
And you could put in Iliad, whatever her name, Ahmed, whatever the hell she was screaming and cackling about on the Senate floor and all scared everybody's going to die. And as it turns out, they were lying, flat out, knew they were doing it, and they didn't even care.
It's been so bad.
Because here's the deal. If you're a skeptic, you look at that and you go, it just doesn't really seem right to me. So let's take a look into this. First off, we've only been tracking temperature since 1878. So I haven't even been tracking it all that long. Planet's been here 4 billion years.
Can we pause there before?
Sure.
I know you're about to go on a roll. When they started tracking it then, they had no protocols for how you actually put they had multiple different types of gauges, and they had no protocol for how you put them. And the science has been a fucking wreck for a long time. Right. Go ahead.
So you're right about that, because probably maybe the last 75 years is actually done well.
The best we can do. Yeah.
So that's all we really have to go on. I'm giving them the other 60 plus years because it's still not even a flea on a cow's ass, given how long the earth has been here. So it's stupid analogies to be even comparing any of that anyway. But they flat out lied. Now, a skeptic like us goes, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right to me. And the skeptic then asks a question, where is your proof that this is happening? And since no one in the mainstream media bothered to ask that question, nobody knew until people who do what we do, like podcasting, some of those really great people went, we better check into this. And then you find out that what they did is they took ground temperature readings, which are oftentimes 10 to 15% higher than air temperature readings. And they gave the ground temperature readings as if they were air temperature readings. So it made it look like we were recording day after day the hottest days in the history of the earth. They were even trying to say going back 120,000 years, which was even more ridiculous. See, now a skeptic goes, wait a minute, we've been tracking temperatures for 133 years, but however, they know now for 120,000 years without any proof of any of that at all. But a dutiful sheep just goes, bah, they said that, it must be true, and they don't do anything about it. So everybody, you were absolutely 100% lied to by the mainstream media and your politicians about everything they were telling you last week, that we are all going to burn in an inferno and our oceans are going to boil off the face of the earth, was all a lie. All of it. Because, and I'm telling you right now, that still in this country, even with all the data and now people all over the social media everywhere now literally laughing and making fun of them for making this claim, they know when they're lying like that a minimum of 50 or more percent of the people will believe them anyway, because they will never think for themselves. And those are the people I want to get the fuck out of our way so that we can make real constructive change, because they're the ones jamming us up.
Back in, it was the late aughts, 2008, 9, something like that. There was the whole ClimateGate conspiracy. It was the IPCC Michael Mann. IPCC is the International Public Conference on Climate Change or something like that. It's a UN panel. Michael Mann and company were caught, where they were busted because their emails were leaked, using the top end, the most ridiculous and egregious top end of the models, and disregarding where most of the data lie in the middle or even the lower models. They just chose the most crazy astronomical models, and they created what was called the hockey stick graph, which showed like it tracked weather, it tracked temperature going along like this, and all of a sudden it went bam. That was the hockey stick graph, and they coined it the hockey stick graph. And then somebody got into their emails and internally leaked them, and you found out that they were telling each other to only take the most dramatic parts of the modeling and only run with that, and to disregard the fact that most of the data fell in line with a more average, delineation. So that was ClimateGate. Fast forward to now, there are still people, this is a video I saw today, there are still people trying to, make sense of all that and actually like back that up and say, well, look, it's those models actually have proven true now, all these years later. And I have a lot of issues with the methodology on that, as does anyone with a fucking sober view of it. Here's a million points, but let me just start with 4 or 5. 1, they take most measurements of temperature in cities. Cities are heat sinks. Cities are full of things like asphalt, giant buildings, there's hardly any green spaces, there's cars, there's steam fucking, all under the ground, like steam networks that heat them. There's
underground transportation,
subways, there's so much that just locks in heat. And the bigger those cities get, the more they do that. And it's demonstrable. You could just go outside in the suburbs and you can see a 5 to 10% or degree decrease the further you go out. So anyway, so you have that.
Not to interrupt you, Chad, but an easier way to explain that is when there is massive snowstorms right outside of New York City, as an example, or Chicago, in the suburbs, or even a little further out, but maybe only 30 miles from the city, 20 miles from the city, they got 24 inches of snow, but the city only got 10. Right. Because most of that snow never made it to the ground. It melted before it got there.
Sure. Yep. You got that. You have less breeze. There's just so many elements. So you have that, then you have the imperfect nature throughout time of the way they've, drawn these temperature data. But at the same time, for me, maybe one of the biggest things that people don't pay attention to is the fact that they've not spent any time looking at ways to reduce the temperature just by changing the way we live. Right? Like, what if we made the roads white? What if I don't know. What if we just didn't what if urbanization is a bad idea? I think it is. You know what I mean?
Well, that may very well be true, and from lots of different perspectives. But the Earth doesn't need to be cooled off. The Earth's doing just fine.
There's another good point,
right?
Also, have humans never adapted?
Well, we have lower CO2 levels now than we did literally for the first 4 billion years the planet was here. This is nothing new. That the whole hundreds of millions of years of the dinosaurs, there were no polar caps. The whole planet was friggin' tropical. So none of this should be shocking if you are a skeptic and you read and you try to figure out how these things actually get done. The sun has far more to play on everything that's happening
Right.
on Earth than we do.
And if it's something like that we have no control over whatsoever, then so be it. But if you're claiming that humans have control over this thing, which is CO2 emissions,
grow more trees,
then I also believe that humans we can adapt ways to counteract that doesn't involve more taxation, more whatever the government's coming up with,
well,
which is all
CO2 is the
bullshit.
culprit, right? That's what they say. CO2 is the
Yeah.
culprit. Then why aren't we planting literally billions of acres of more trees all around the world to suck up that CO2? It would be extremely cheap to do. It's seeds.
Well, I mean, the truth is we actually,
right? I mean, all we're putting into to solar farms that are made out of panels that are not biodegradable and that are going to destroy the earth when they have to be changed out. They're worthless. They can't be recycled. They're horrible. Right? We're spending all this money on these sorts of ridiculous things. Just plant some damn trees. If in fact you actually believe that the earth is going to be destroyed because humans live on it, which I don't subscribe to that at all.
I agree, man. So the earth, when it's done with us, it'll chew us up, spit us out.
Spit us out. Yep.
That'll
We've
be
talked about this before.
And
Earth doesn't care that we're here at all. It doesn't even know we're here. It doesn't even give a shit.
I contend the earth has chewed us up and spit us out numerous times over, and that we just don't actually know it nor understand it. And that there has been civilizations much previous to us, much earlier than us, that had technology that we don't even comprehend. It's different than ours, but it's technology we didn't comprehend, and they were completely wiped out by whatever cataclysmic event that probably happens in a very rotational situation, and I think we're probably due. So, fuck climate change. You guys are fucking retarded, dude. As far as man-made like climate change, do we have some sort of impact on the amount of heating that's happening right now? I think that is possible. I really do. And I believe that it's probably on a level that is measurable, but I think it's fairly minuscule comparative, especially to a bunch of other things that are going on that are making things happen at a much higher rate. That said, if we care about the earth, we should care more about the fact that there are third world countries currently polluting the fuck out of their waters and their soil because they don't have fossil fuels, because they don't have electricity, because they don't have waste management, because they don't have plumbing, because they don't have all the modern shit that all you motherfuckers get that are sitting here fucking praising Greta and flushing your shitter and keeping your lights on and watching fucking Netflix and listening to your iPhone and everything fucking else you're doing. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of fucking people in the third world who don't have what you have, and you're basically telling them, we want to shut the fucking gate off right now. We don't want you to develop because we don't want any more carbon emissions, because we don't think you guys should be able to catch up to us because it's too much at this point. Not only is that hypocrisy, but it's fucking evil. But at the same time, if you really want to clean the earth up, propel those people out of abject poverty.
That's right. I couldn't agree any more with that statement. You want to start cleaning up the planet. You start by getting people out of poverty. That's how that always gets done. You can just look at the United States of America. Before the Industrial Revolution, the sicknesses, septics, sicknesses and E. coli sicknesses, diphtheria. People were dying from diarrhea,
dysentery,
because they were literally throwing their feces out windows, right? There was no sewer systems. There was none of that going on. The richer we got, the stronger we got, the more we were able to bring these things to bear and to make our lives better. And the only way to improve their lives is be able to do the exact same thing. We need to pull people out of poverty, and that will change everything much quicker than building solar farms. Or really, there's two things that are going on. We need to be good stewards of the planet because it's just a smart thing to do, period. I would never argue that we shouldn't be good stewards of the planet.
Moral.
Right. So I have no issue there. But for people who are in this climate change mindset, if you're not a skeptic, then you will believe everything they're telling you. If you are skeptical and you are willing to do some research and follow the money, you would know that all these people who are telling you the doom and gloom stories become enormously wealthy and never accomplish anything, never change a damn thing, and never care to. And so without being a skeptic, then again, you get to be a sheep, and then you get to make an ass out of yourself every time you open your damn mouth and don't know what you're talking about. And it just, so how about all you educated white liberals who think that you know what you're talking about, get off your high horse, do a little bit of research, and let's fix poverty. How about we fix poverty? That's something we can actually all get our hands into, and we can see if we're actually making a change, right? That's something we could all do together. If we took the money that we gave, just imagine what we could do with the money we just gave to the Ukraine alone so that they can continue to kill their own citizens in a war they cannot win. And what if we took that 130 billion or whatever it's been, not including the other tens of billions of dollars are not counting, we'll call it 150 billion, we'll be fair, and you gave that to African nations who are suffering, right? How much good can we actually do? Probably a hell of a lot. But are we willing to do that? Of course not. That doesn't get anybody rich. So for you people who are unwilling to be skeptical, are willing to follow these politicians and medias and your, God, even worse, entertainers who know less than the people I'm bitching about right now, and this is what you're willing to hang your hat on, then you deserve for us to make fun of you and call you out on it. There are things that we can do to improve this world. You guys just don't want to be a part of it because you live in your cult world where the only thing that matters is what your people tell you to do. And that's the problem. We can go over it. We've been over this a million times. The biggest problem that this country faces is the fact that we have two giant cults, one called the Republicans, one called the Democrats, and it takes up about 90% of our population. And as soon as we get rid of those cults, the sooner we can get on to fixing the damn world.
Well, that's a good story. True story. I don't know if you've seen, there's a PBD, the Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David did a interview with Anthony Weiner recently. It was fucking epic. And I was like, Anthony Weiner, of all people, he's coming back around. Like, this is the guy who was actually convicted of sending dick pics to a 15-year-old girl. And yeah, I went to prison for almost 2 years or whatever it was. He was married to Huma Abedin. Huma Abedin was Hillary Clinton's right-hand girl.
Correct.
Her chief of staff. So he is all up in the Clinton, cabal. And he's clearly a scumbag. I'm sure him and Bill get along just fine, sending dick pics to 15-year-olds. And so Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David had him on. And yeah, it was already probably going to go bad for him. But apparently Weiner showed up, and it was raining really hard in Florida, for God's sake. Shocker. It was raining really hard in Florida, in Miami, where their base is. And Weiner was walking in, and apparently it was like very flooded. The streets are very flooded because it was dumping. And as he walks in, and like all of PBD and all of his people are there, and he's like, man, I hope you guys are going to talk to the landlord about this shithole, because what a dump, like this place is taking on water. And meanwhile, PBD owns the fucking building. You know, the landlord is the guy you just saw, but whatever. So he's going to let that roll. But Weiner has, like any politician, and also Weiner apparently has a AM radio show now. He's done some opposition research, of course. So he goes in and he apparently introduces himself, and then he looks at Patrick Bet-David and he goes, "And what's your name?" He said, "What's your name?" And so Patrick Bet-David's like, "I'm Patrick." And he's like, "Okay, cool." So PBD, being the fucking guy he is, he's a G. He's just like, all right, that's the way it's going to be. I'm not going to fucking get bent, but I'm going to bury you later, you know? And that's exactly what he does. When he brings it up later, Weiner tries to say that, I was just trying to figure out what you go by. Is it Pat or Patrick? And he goes, well, then you could have asked me, do you go by Pat or Patrick? But you said, what's your name? He's like, that's no, man. You were trying to fucking chest up on me, dude. And Weiner kept Wienering his way out of it, just being exactly who he is and just what his name is. He was just trying to Weiner his way out of it. And PBD was just like, okay, whatever. So then he just moved on because PBD has a fucking podcast to handle. And he starts to let him talk about all kinds of stuff. But the funniest part is when he brings up the Clinton death toll, the 54 different individuals that are tightly connected to the Clintons that have all died. And he starts reading the list, and Weiner gets fucking angry, bro. And he basically goes into this whole tirade about how it's disgusting that you would prey on these dead people, and then I'm not standing up for the Clintons, I'm standing up for their families, these dead people's families. How dare you besmirch them by trying to say it's some conspiracy and they just need their own solace and they need to, to have it all shushed, and you're here with your 5 million followers trying to make a big conspiracy out of these people's deaths. And it's retarded. So they just keep going, and PBD just keeps digging in. It's fucking hilarious. But I use all this as a segue. We all know the fucking Clintons have a gazillion people in their wake dead, right? I use this as a segue. I don't know if you know this,
we're
but
all pretty clear on that.
right? I don't know if you know this, but the Obama's private chef was just found dead.
Yes.
Just found dead on their estate.
On a paddleboard.
On a paddleboard.
And he
floating in their 8-foot deep pond.
Yeah, interesting.
What does that guy know about the Clintons?
Right. and the Obamas, apparently.
Fuck the Obamas. He knows something about the Clintons, goddammit.
So
I'm just kidding. Same.
Yeah. So I just read that. I couldn't believe it. I was like, now to be fair, accidents happen. So it is a possibility. It just seems unlikely. That's all I'm saying. Considering that it happened on their property and there's Secret Service crawling all over the goddamn place. If a guy ends up flipping on his paddleboard, I don't see how you can't get out of your paddleboard and swim to safety in 8 feet of water, whatever.
Sometimes you're hunting with Dick Cheney and you get shot in the face.
The face again. Accident.
It sucks. But it just
oh my God. Imagine that poor guy got shot in the damn face. He was never going to point fingers at anybody because he'd be dead for sure. Good Lord. Now, a skeptic may go, there's maybe something to the fact that politicians are killing people around them to protect themselves. And then there's people who aren't skeptics who go, wow, 54 people involved with the Clintons have died over the years. That's really sad for the Clintons. They must feel really bad about that.
Well, Morons. So what Weiner tried to do was the same thing that all of them tried to do.
Weiner's a fucking pedophile. Jesus.
Right. Now, so why would I even listen to him?
Because he was on Pat's show. Here's the thing about Weiner that totally trips me out. This guy has done podcasts before. He always gets humiliated. What kind of sycophantic fucktard do you got to be to actually even want to go on shows that you know they're going to fucking destroy you, and you show up anyway? Because that's
He's just like Hunter Biden. He's a masochist, bro.
Yeah, well,
he's so disgusting. He
wants
the flagellation.
I think he's a psychopath. I don't think that he has any empathy for any human on earth other than himself. I don't think he's capable of it. So he doesn't feel humiliation. You can't humiliate him, right? It doesn't matter. So that's the only reason that, in my mind, that you could go on a show that's going to attempt to destroy you is because you're so narcissistic and you're a psychopath, and it doesn't even occur to you that you aren't godlike and that everything's going to work out in your favor.
Sounds a lot like Trump.
There's that. So, speaking of being skeptical, when you hear reports that this time they got Trump, after the 30 times they haven't, you might want to be skeptical about that.
Yep, not happening, folks.
I mean,
by the way, it's all bullshit.
And now they've completely declared that these new charges for the January 6th, anybody who thinks that Trump could even possibly be convicted of that when there are visual and audio recordings of him doing the exact opposite of what they're claiming, probably puts him pretty much in the safe seat. It's
even the points that they think they have him on, where it's not like in the public, it's what he did behind the scenes. They would have to prove intent.
Right.
You can't fucking do good fucking luck, dude. It's not gonna happen. So stupid. Yeah. Anyway.
I think if somebody says, be peaceful, I think that's what they mean. So I don't know. Right. Maybe he gave maybe he gave this, that used to be the okay sign, which is now some white supremacist sign.
Yeah, apparently.
It's just fucking bullshit, all of it. But a skeptic, however, would actually ask some questions or want questions answered. And I am a skeptic, and I have been my whole life. This is what I can tell you from a skeptic's perspective. If I ask a question and you cannot answer it, it's because you're a fucking liar.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, did all of these young male athletes aged 18, 17 to 24 roughly, who are in the best shape they're in the top 1% shape of all people in the world?
You mean maybe like LeBron James' son Boney?
Maybe Bronny, yeah. Maybe guys like Bronny who are just all of a sudden dropping down with cardiac arrest. Should I be skeptical about the fact that people are saying it can't be because of the vaccine?
Yeah, and
I think I should be skeptical.
18-year-old having a heart attack. So here's a funny thing about that. So I like the television show. It's been off the air for a while, but the Hugh Laurie show House, where he's an infectious disease guy and he figures out these crazy problems with people's health. And on one of them is he's presented with a teenager who has a heart attack. And his whole team and him are like, what the hell's going on? Teenagers don't have heart attacks. And now we have teenagers having heart attacks all over the goddamn place. So, interesting.
It does happen rarely.
Skeptic might go, did you have the jab?
It does happen rarely. Apparently, Shaquille O'Neal's son had a random heart event. It's not the same thing as cardiac arrest.
That's right.
They're trying to conflate it, but so it can happen. But my point is the military, the DOD.
Not that it can't happen. It's just that it's extraordinarily rare, and it's not anymore.
Bro, today the DOD just released the data on men 18 to 24 out of 450,000 men in the military, fit men. It's gone from 8 individuals per vaccination of all the vaccinations they give to 24. And that started at 18. It's gone to 22, now 24. It's on the rise. They expected that study to still continue to rise.
So it's up 300%.
Triple. We're on the rise to quadruple myocarditis. What's that fucking tell you? I mean, that's clear.
It's clear because obviously it has nothing to do with getting the jab. Because that's the only thing that could correlate to. But because nobody wants to be skeptical, nobody would ask a simple question like, do you think maybe the jab had something to do with it?
Yeah.
Which, of course, they will scream. I mean, how fast were they with Brawny and him having this heart attack? How fast was the media immediately to jump out and go, well, we know it's not the jab, right? Immediately. The doctors have already confirmed. They're just making that shit up.
Such a red flag. Well,
here's the thing. If a politician or a media member is opening their mouth, you have an almost 100% chance that they're lying to you. You might want to be skeptical about that.
Yes.
You might want to just go, wait a minute. That doesn't make much sense to me.
You should be skeptical about everything, man.
Why
skepticism is important. And skepticism doesn't have to be ideology. I think people can conflate skepticism with like doubt or like a fundamental disagreement or something like that. Like, so just because I don't, necessarily agree with your politics doesn't mean I don't have to listen to the words you're saying about what you read or what you saw. And maybe I'm skeptical about what you're saying, but I'm not completely disregarding it. I am going to keep it at bay until further notice. So I'm skeptical, but I'm not throwing it in the shitter, right? That's totally different. Skepticism lives in a different realm. It's not like you're dismissing it. You're just like, I don't know if I believe this. I'm going to fucking wait until I have a little more evidence.
Right.
Oh, God forbid.
But our media and our politicians over the course of decades have trained the populace to be their monkeys for the organ grinder and just buy whatever they're being told exactly at the time they're being told, whatever message they want to get out. And if you don't agree 100% within 5 seconds of receiving the information, then you're a racist or you're a misogynist or you're a homophobic or whatever epitaph they want to put on you to try to shame you into just following along with the rest of the sheep. All of it is planned. And that's why you need to be skeptical. This is exactly what Carl Sagan was talking about. This is the reason that you have to be skeptical. You need an educated populace that is willing to ask hard questions. Because if you're not willing to do that, then you have what we are currently suffering with right now. I think, hopefully, at least I like to see, I'm seeing some evidence now that they might have pushed their hand a little too far with COVID because they're getting far more pushback than before. And as long as we can keep the media platforms from being censored by the government so that people can have the free exchange of information, I think the more pushback we're going to have. We now have people like Tucker Carlson and Jimmy Dore, Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, Pat, and many others who are using a different form of media to get out truth. And if not necessarily straight up truth, a different point of view, multiple different points of view, because they're allowing the end user to come to their own conclusions, which our media and government will not allow any longer. So more and more people are being drawn into this. The nightly news on ABC, NBC, and CBS just a couple of decades ago was 90% of the news sources. Now, Joe Rogan literally has 16 to 17 times their audience every day. He's blowing them out of the water. And so are a lot of these other guys. More and more people are being informed by different sources than they ever would have considered just a few years ago. And that's going to be good for all of us.
So skepticism across the board, it's important. I am skeptical that the Republicans are going to do anything actually fruitful or instrumental to stop the Biden crime syndicate. I will be the first one to be surprised if they actually do carry through with impeachment proceedings. I know that McCarthy has been threatening it, and I think that he's been very soft on it. He's been like, so we just want to stick our toe in the impeachment waters so that we can get a little bit more information. And once we can get a little more information, then we'll see. And it's like, well, how much fucking more information? You have witnesses, bro. You have witnesses. You don't even just have IRS witnesses. You have Bobolinsky and what's his name, Devin Archer. You have actual business partners who are testifying to
you have
this.
emails and text messages.
So much correspondence. It's all fucking there, and you're like, well, let's not open up an inquiry, Ed. We're going to open up an inquiry.
I don't think that there's skepticism there. I think that most people on the left actually know the truth about Joe Biden, and they just don't fucking care.
They don't want to admit it. And if the news won't make them, if the media won't force them, if the media won't force them to admit it, then they never will.
And the media is not going to do it because they're being paid by their overlords. And their overlords are the ones who are running the show. Because anybody who thinks that Joe Biden has any power on the world stage is mentally fucking retarded.
Well, and
there's no other way to put it. Joe Biden has Alzheimer's, people, maybe just dementia. Either way, he is not in his faculties. Joe Biden has no power on the world stage. None. The people who control him do. And you don't know who those people are. Talk about skepticism. You won't even ask questions when you're being lied directly to your face about things that are obvious. You're never going to look into what's really going on, right? That's out of the question. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like every time my mom shows up at the airport to visit me, I'm like, are you really my mom? Are you some fucking reptilian? I never, I'm like,
have you figured it out yet?
What's my birthday? What's my favorite ice cream? Like tell me a story about my childhood. All right, you pass. So she always does. And she tells me a different one every time just to make sure that I'm, not thinking she's a reptilian because they could be listening.
It could be.
Yeah. So anyway, with that, do you have anything else to talk about today, sir? I've got a fucking gazillion things, but like we have limited time here, so
yeah, we're pushing up on it. If we go in another direction, we may exceed at the patience of our audience and lose them.
And I think I'm going to plug some videos in here too. So
we can wrap this up. I will wrap it up with this. If you're not willing to be skeptical, that's fine with me. If you want to buy the narrative, that's also fine with me. You are free to do it however you would like to do. What you are not free to do is get my goddamn way when I want to get skeptical and when I want to ask relevant questions and when I want to try to get change done. You're in my way. So if you're not going to get out on your own, I'm going to push you out of my fucking way.
If your starting point isn't skepticism, you're wrong.
Yeah, agree.
That should just be the initial point, like question everything. And it doesn't mean you don't have to question it from an angle or from a certain viewpoint. Don't have a preconceived notion. That's not what I'm saying. Like, you don't question it because you already have your mind made up. You question it because, well, are you sure? Let me get some more info. Always be looking for more data points. And just don't accept what especially the fucking corporate news tells you. These people have paid sponsors. Why would the people keep paying the sponsorships? Why would they continue to sink the millions of dollars that they do into keeping these corporations alive if they weren't carrying their water? It's fucking obvious. And if you're not skeptical enough to see that, I can't really help you. You're probably not watching this. You would have already disregarded everything we had to say. And thank you for everyone who might still be watching, because you're part of the solution.
Right.
So,
be a skeptic.
Yeah, be a skeptic. It's that simple. So be skeptical of everything we say, by the way.
That's absolutely. Yeah. Do it. Challenge us. Fight it. You don't have to agree, but you should at least be willing to engage and not just regurgitate information that you don't even know what you're regurgitating. It just becomes supercilious. It's pointless.
Yeah.
But for those who dare subscribe and like, we would greatly appreciate it. We love doing what we're doing. We know that we're not the two smartest guys on the internet, but we know we're close.
Yeah.
So,
probably the top two.
we're the top two smartest guys on the Tortured Man podcast. I can say that for sure.
We're in at least the top 200 top two. We're at least in the top two.
So thanks for everybody tuning in. We always appreciate it. And we will see you, or you'll see us next week. Thanks again, and peace out.
Peace.